All right, so we are back today with another conversation style video. I wanted to discuss with you guys optics. Optics specifically because optics are one of those things that are so often overlooked as far as budget goes by entry level or new shooters. They buy the cheapest optic they can find after they buy their rifle, and it is just absolutely maddening. Knowing what I know now, I was also one of those guys. I mean, Holosun was what I started with, so it wasn't like a true Amazon special. But before we get into all that information, I want to talk risers, I want to talk scopes, scope mounts, and then just optics in general. I wanted to just let you guys know that I really appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Thank you for everything you do for the channel. If you guys want to support the channel, a free way to do so is to like, comment, or subscribe. Since we talk about 2A stuff here, that really helps with the algorithm. The other way to do it, if you wanted to buy something, not encouraging you to go into debt or do anything just to support the channel, but if you're gonna buy anything anyways, I'm a huge fan of Brownells. They're the biggest supporter of the channel right now, so big shout out and thank you to Brownells. And if you guys want to use my discount code, I would greatly appreciate it. It's RDB10, saves you 10% off at brownells.com, and it helps out the channel as well with a little kickback. Lastly, we have rangedaybro.com where you can pick up any merch. We have the Pro Gun Club shirt here. Let me know what you guys think. Even if you don't pick up a shirt, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below about the new designs. I'd love to hear from you guys. And then lastly, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, that's the best way to message me and get a hold of me. If you have questions about any builds or anything you're looking into, I'll give you my best opinion on it. That's all it is. I'm just a guy. It's just my opinion, but it's a good way to get a hold of me, and to follow me over there as well would be much appreciated. So let's talk optics. So the reason I'm kind of talking about this today is because I've recently gotten two new optics. One of them is my absolute dream LPVO, just for the Instagram flex, just for the sexiness of it. And I admit I'm a hypocrite because I talk about this all the time. Don't fall into the hype, the hype train. But this optic right here has been proven in combat, has documented cases of like taking extreme abuse over in the GWAT space. And this is the Night Force Attacker 1-8 LPVO with their FC DMX reticle. So very pumped about this optic right here. It's a dream optic of mine, and it was sent to me by Brownells. So big shout out to Brownells once again. But we will have a full review coming out on this optic eventually. And then secondly, we have the Lead and Steel Promethean LP-1. This thing is pretty, took the market by storm. I've been seeing these everywhere. Really cool little, kind of cross between an aim point and an EOTech. It is a reflective like laser. It's not a holographic sight itself, but it's a pretty cool little housing. It looks more like a UH-1 from Vortex than it does like an EOTech, but it has the little shroud housing here and this tan color, which looks really sick. And I think right now I have it on a dot. I don't know if you can tell, but the glass is very clear and very little distortion. I don't see any kind of hint or hue to it. Yeah, it's on the dot right now. But I'm not doing a full review on either of these optics. I just wanted to talk to you guys more so about optics in general. One of my biggest pet peeves is when a guy will buy, when I say a guy, I'm talking about like a friend or customer of mine who I consider friends, will buy a rifle or they'll get given a rifle by their wife, whether it's a Diamondback, a Palmetto State. They'll get like an entry level, like, hey, this is my first AR-15. They're super stoked. And then they'll ask me for my opinion on what kind of optic they should get for the rifle. And then they'll immediately act like I shit in their mouth, essentially, because I will tell them flat out, hey, look, your optic, there's the old saying, I don't know where this originated from, but the old saying is like, you should spend twice as much on your optic as you have on your rifle. I think that's more so for like when guys used to just shoot bolt guns back in the day, and you could buy a bolt rifle for $200 at your local sporting goods store. I don't think that's as true today because rifles have gotten significantly more expensive, but so have optics, I guess, in that sense. But regardless of that, you should at least spend as much on your rifle. Like if you bought a Diamondback AR-15 for $700, like, and you are going to trust that thing to your life, that's your only rifle, it's your home defense gun, like, I'm sorry, but that rifle is probably going to run just as good for the first, 10,000 rounds as something like a Dano Defense or a Geisley, I'm sure. But as far as your optic goes, this guy, the same guy I'm using as an example here, put a Amazon special, like I don't even know what you call it. I don't want to call any companies out. I don't think it was Sightmark. It was like Amazon special, little tiny piece of sliver of glass, red dot. I'll see if I can roll in a picture here, but actually I'm not going to because these are unedited. So, but you can envision it. It's like 60, $70 on Amazon. And the thing was absolutely atrocious. I mean, it had like 15 different reticles, like 12 different colors. And when we went to the range, it was nowhere near zeroed. And if it ever was zeroed, it didn't hold zero. So he kind of acted like I was, shitting in his Cheerios to tell him like, hey, that's awesome. You got that great gun, dude. Like you got your first AR-15. Your wife hooked you up with it. Freaking great. Now, what do I recommend? I recommend EOTech. I recommend Aimpoint. I recommend any quality LPVO. You can get a Vortex. And I said even Holosun, like the 503G. That's like as cheap as I would go. And even in that case, I would buy the Holosun 503G for like whatever it is, 150, $200, and then buy an ADM or some other type of mount to put it on since it takes that Aimpoint T2 footprint. ScalarWorks, whoever it is. But yeah, he was like, when I started mentioning those names and those prices, he got very discouraged very quickly and was like, dude, that's way out of my budget. That's way out of my price range. And I get it 100%. However, people can budget for many things. And if it's a priority to you, you can budget for a $500 optic, even if it takes you a few months. So what my recommendation to him was, okay, if you can't afford those right now, don't waste your money on some Amazon special. Spend that money instead on iron sights. You can get a cheap pair of plastic or metal, and I like the MBus Pros, even though they're ridiculously expensive. Spend your money on iron sights and then save up for the optic eventually. So he has recently, since he's been shooting more, realized that, he needs a quality optic, and he's kind of come to since that discussion. But originally he was like completely appalled. And I think a lot of people are, and including myself. I was in the same boat, 3 years ago when I first started the channel, before I started the channel even. I was just so appalled by the price of optics, and they're stupid expensive. However, as I've stated in many of my past videos, it's like, do you really need another rifle? Like that $1,500 rifle you just bought could have been used to purchase a Trijicon Credo 1-8, or could have been used to get you a better optic to replace that, that Holosun whatever. And I'm not like picking on Holosun here. They for me, they've never given me issues, especially my pistol dots. 507C, 407K, I've never had issues with them, so I don't mean to pick on them, but they're kind of like the budget option, but they're actually a pretty decent quality considering the budget option, but made in China, which, some of this may have been made in China as well. It's assembled in the US, but it's hard to avoid that. What I'm trying to say is like, it's a lot more important to have a quality optic than it is to have another rifle. And I know I kind of covered this in my biggest regrets video, and we're talking more in general about kit overall in that video, but in this video I just wanted to talk more about optics. And so now that I've kind of stressed the point of why it's so important to have a quality optic, let's talk more about options and let's just talk about risers, different setups. So right here I'm holding a red dot, for lack of a term. This is not a holographic sight, it's a red dot. EOTech, I kind of classify red dots and EOTechs, even though they're different, holographic versus a red dot, in the same category, except for the fact that if you have an astigmatism, the red dots are going to be more blurry than crispy, although for some reason this red dot to my eye is pretty crispy. I can't explain it, so don't ask me to, but this dot, when it's on a proper light setting, has a little bit of starburst, and I have astigmatism. That's why I love EOTech so much. But this has a little bit of starburst, but mostly it is pretty darn clear. I don't know if I can get this to focus. Let's see if I can. Probably not going to be able to see that. But this thing is pretty darn clear to my eye. So that's a major difference. It doesn't have to be a product or a company or an optic that I like. It just has to be from a reputable company. Some of the most reputable optics that I have that I love are going to be from Trijicon, in the ACOGs that I have and in the RMRs that I have. I used to have an MRO, but they had terrible parallax, so I sold that a long time ago. But Trijicon is some of my favorites. EOTech is also one of my favorites. Probably my favorite is EOTech right now with their 507, or sorry, the EOTech EXPS 3-2 that I have. right here on my URGI upper and the Unity riser, which we'll talk about in a second. But EOTech, incredible optic company. I also have their 5-25 first focal plane with the Horus Trimmer 3 reticle on the HKMR762 behind me. That scope, let me just deviate from that real quick. I'm going to come back to this topic. So Trijicon, EOTech, I like Vortex. Put it that way. I've had a couple of the Vortex products. They're pretty decent. You know, they have different levels, obviously. But I did return the 1-6 Gen 2 Vortex Razor, was it? Whichever the 1-6, the famous 1-6 is the second focal plane, because it had a wire reticle. And I've seen a bunch of pictures on the internet of those being damaged. And everything that I buy, I want it to be like absolutely bomb-proof, ready to go to war. It's going to survive. Like, I don't have any competition guns. I don't have any, I mean, the Prodigy maybe, I guess, is more of a finicky type platform. But like the rest of what I run is like, I want to be able to run through torture tests and through really adverse conditions. So take that into consideration with everything I'm saying. But yeah, so some Vortex products, and I'm a big fan of primary arms reticles, and I really like my 4-14 first focal plane, that's on my it's an SLX. It's like the cheapest one. It's like $289. That's on my Mark 12, modernized Mark 12 build. Freaking absolutely love that thing. It's a great scope for the price. But again, it's lacking in a lot of ways because it's $289 scope made in China. So there's going to be a lot of sacrifices you make. Just to pivot back to the EOTech first focal plane, one of the things that I really like to have is an ARD. People will argue about the realistic uses of an anti-reflective device. I like having them because, again, if I'm ever, in a scenario where I'm being hunted or I don't want to be seen with my glass reflecting, whether it's hunting or otherwise, I want to know that I'm not going to be, beaming my location away with my ARD. But on the first focal plane, EOTech, that ARD that I have on there, it's an Adamount. It's a Adelan Engineering Company ARD, one of the most durable, high quality scope caps you can get. They're super high quality, but it does restrict a lot of the light transmission coming through the front of the lens. So that is an issue for me when I'm shooting out to 1,000 yards. I mean, inside 1,000 yards, it's no problem at all, but at 730 yards and at this, 1,000-yard range, mostly the 1,000-yard target was a little bit more difficult to see with ARD. So something to keep in mind, and why I think Antimatter Industries, 100 Concepts, I think that their scope cap is really cool because you can just flip it. You can flip the ARD to the side as well as the cap that covers the ARD. So that's a really cool, innovative product that I'm interested in. I don't know how it would work on such a big front end lens like the EOTech Voodoo 5-25 has, but that's just something to consider when you're looking at scopes and whatnot. But those are a few companies that are really good companies that I would trust my life to, specifically EOTech, specifically Trijicon, and we'll see about lead and steel. I'm really excited to try this thing out. I think from everything I've read and heard, this is going to also be a very, very bomb-proof kind of optic to test out. Honestly, the window kind of looks like a Holosun a little bit there. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It looks like a Holosun. I wouldn't be surprised if the same factory who's making the Holosuns is making these housings. Housing 7075 T6 aluminum, and the shroud that covers it is a separate piece of metal. That is 60, whatever that other 65. So that's a different type of aluminum, a little bit softer, but it's meant to be like a sacrificial lamb to take impacts and whatnot. But really excited about that. Night Force is one of the optics that has been a dream optic for me. It's been on the list for a very long time, especially the Attacker 1-8. Once I started this URGI kind of build, I wanted to get my hands on one of these. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to do it all rifle, but I've never actually used a Night Force optic, so this will be all new to me. But they have a great reputation in the industry, similarly to Trijicon for being bomb-proof. So this thing, I'm not worried about it not being up to snuff. But optics are one of those things that when you buy a new gun, it is absolutely paramount that you just get a good optic. One guy put it to me this way that made a lot of sense to me, is that it's a lot easier to resell a rifle than it is to resell an optic. Not that any of you guys are interested or I'm advocating for you to sell your guns, but if you outgrow a gun and you buy your first Palmetto State, like I started with all Aero Precision and Palmetto State rifles, AR-15s, and I outgrew them. I loved them for a while. They were great fun to shoot, but eventually I got tired of shooting them and I wanted something a little bit better, you know, marginally better, a lot more cost. But then I got into the Daniel Defenses and I got into, you know, the HK rifles, and now I'm in the Geisley Upper, which is my favorite, really. And so it was a lot easier. It's a lot easier to resell a rifle than it is to resell an optic. So if you have a cheap budget red dot and a Holosun, and that's another bad example because Holosuns, I feel like you can resell them for a decent price, but you just want to get the optic you want for your dream rifle before you have your dream rifle. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. Like, if I could do it all over again, I would save up for my optics more than I save up for my rifles, because the optic is more important at the end of the day. It's what you're aiming with. It's what's going to determine whether you can, if it holds 0 or not. It's what's going to determine whether you can hit your target or not. And most rifles, even the really cheap ones, are going to be pretty damn reliable in 2023. Almost 2024 now. So that is something to consider. Just think about when you're going through this path, this journey of, okay, what optic should I put on what rifle? Let's talk risers real quick, since we got one out here. This is the Unity fast riser. This is a EOTech with a lower 1/3 co-witness. Originally a lower 1/3 co-witness sitting on here, so it sits it up a little bit higher even. And why is this a great option? First of all, they're not, in the grand scheme of things, they're not that expensive. They're like $100, and they give you the ability to have a much more heads-up shooting position, especially for passive aiming through night vision. But even if you don't have night vision, because the vast majority of people out there don't have night vision, including myself, I'm still working on getting night vision, then it is just a much more comfortable shooting position for when you're wearing body armor. Again, even if you don't have body armor, it's just a much more comfortable shooting position to be able to look through your optic straight up and down. Now, is this the best for a long-range setup? No. And that's why I have, for the Attacker 1-8, I have a 1.7-inch mount from Badger Condition 1 that I'm going to be putting that in and putting it on this rifle, because if I'm laying prone or if I'm just trying to get a nice precise shot, I want to have a good cheek weld and not more of a chin weld like you have with these risers. So I want to have more of a cheek weld, and then I'm going to throw an RMR up on the top ring for passive aiming through night vision, because I want this to be my do-it-all rifle. But with that being said, is it necessary? No, you don't need it unless it's really not even necessary for when you're shooting night vision. A lower 1/3 will do it, but it's a lot more convenient for your comfort and fast, accurate follow-up shots, awareness, things like that. But that's pretty much it, guys. Let me know down in the comments like what your favorite optics are. What do you guys love? What brands do you love? What brands do you not love? Why don't you love those brands? Let me know. We can have a little discussion down in the comment section and just talk about it. So let me know what you guys think down below. If you want to support the channel, brownells.com, RDB10 for 10% off, rangedaybro.com for merch, and then follow me on Instagram. If you want to message me about anything, that's the best way to do it. Thank you guys so much for staying to the end of the video. As always, I love you guys. Make it a great day, and talk to you soon.